Welcome to the Wise and Happy Life podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern science, and mindfulness, philosophy, and happiness practices blend with neuroscience, compassion, and common sense. Hosted by Bob Martin, meditation mentor, happiness coach, trial lawyer, and entrepreneur. This podcast explores how to live with grace, presence, and purpose in a complex world.
Hello, good people, and welcome to another episode of A Wise and Happy Life. And as you know, I always like to start off by setting a theme. And I have to start today with a little bit of a confession, because you've heard me talk about it, and I use the term in my teaching meditation, and you heard it from all kinds of people, this thing called an authentic self. And although when I conjure up those words, when I think about those words, I kind of think I understand what I'm saying, but in a certain way, there's a little mystery to it. I mean, is there really an authentic self, or is it just something that our mind creates? And if it is one, I mean, where does it reside? And so I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And the wonderful thing is that we have a guest today that can help us to really get into a deep conversation about what is the authentic self and how do we reconnect with it. And through reconnecting with it, reconnect with so much more, because we are so much more. So Kelly Waggoner, a clinical psychologist, clinical psychotherapist, a person who is delving in at the edges of psychotherapy, someone who has practiced the traditional things and found that maybe if we push the boundaries a little bit, we can get better results. And she has, and I'm so happy to have her on the show today. Kelly, say hi.
Hi, Bob. Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's start off by talking a little bit about, how you came to want to be a psychologist to begin with, and, what your story and what your journey in being a psychologist has been like.
Oh, absolutely. So my path was winding, as I think many people will relate. I was actually in my early 20s working at a law firm, assisting on a case involving antidepressants. And my role at this law firm was to be our client liaison and talk to the people who were just lay people involved in this lawsuit. And what I realized was the thing I liked most about my role was having deep, meaningful conversations with the people we were helping. And it led me then to go to grad school and get my doctorate in clinical psychology. And I've actually been practicing for about 20 years now. In those couple of decades, a lot has changed, but it's been always my North Star is helping people uncover the truth of who they really are, and then have the courage cultivation to express that truth in the world.
Almost as if there are, two stages: first discovering and then expressing.
Absolutely.
So,
and sometimes they happen simultaneously, but we have to first know thyself to express thyself.
Right. So this whole area, is kind of a little bit of a mystery to me, because when we say, who they really are, well, someone might just say, well, I know who I am. I'm this guy who does this, and I'm defined by this and this, and I'm a wife, and I'm a husband, and I'm a father, and I'm this, and I'm that. And what are you talking about, who I really am? I know who I really am.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
So I believe we all come into this world knowing exactly who we are. And then because of the families we're born into, expectations, both spoken and unspoken, conditioning, modeling that happens around us, both subtle and overt, we start to mold ourselves in subtle and extreme ways, a bit away from our true self. So our authentic self could be simply defined as the self that exists underneath all of our conditioning.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I use a metaphor of one of those old original black slate blackboards, right?
Mhm.
And when you
Yep.
make the first marks on them, they're nearly impossible to erase,
Right.
but then they erase and then eventually they just have a gray sheen. So like what you're saying is that blackboard was our original self and we covered up, so to speak,
Mhm.
with that chalky gray stuff.
Right, exactly, and so the metaphor to carry it forward would be in this process of becoming the authentic self. We're not creating an authentic
Uh-huh.
self. It's already there. We're uncovering. We're cleaning off those layers of silt to uncover the self that always was
hmm
underneath.
in pop psychology, which I was really taken to transactional analysis.
Mhm.
I really like that school of psychology because it seems to make things very practicable and understandable to the lay mind. But they talk about the child that you were still living in you, but that there's two. There's the natural child and the adapted child,
Right,
and
right.
that they still live in you. Do you?
I absolutely agree. I think kind of an interesting prompt for people to consider is the question, how do you think you would have expressed as a child if all of you was accepted? What
Ooh,
would have been different
oh, wait,
in
wait, wait,
your
wait, wait, wait.
childhood?
Say that again. Say that again.
How would you have expressed as a child if you knew all of you would be accepted?
Wow. I mean, looking back at those childhood years, it I don't I can't even wrap my head around that.
So what you can do, and what I suggest people listening
Uh-huh.
do, is create a writing prompt, a writing practice around this. Write the prompt at the top of the page.
Uh-huh.
How would I have expressed as a child if I knew at, at the core of my being that all of me would be accepted? And then set a timer for 7 minutes and engage in what's called stream of consciousness writing or automatic writing, and allow your pen to flow as quickly as it can, trying to almost outrun the thinking mind, paying no attention to grammar or punctuation, and write until that timer alarm goes off. And what you'll find, usually people around minute 3, 4, 5, this truth starts to be revealed. And it might not be, earth shattering, but these just knowings that were right there that now are coming through this automatic writing
Yeah.
practice. It's really interesting.
And I want to tell you that when you asked the question, it was like blank, like like a deer in the headlights. But then as you were continuing to talk and I continued to sit with it, I started to think, yeah, there were times. I was started getting little flashes of the moments when I felt alive, when I
Mm.
felt completely there, when I was happy, when um, yeah, without think. I mean, it's hard to even express, the sensation, but there are
I want to,
flashes that I can remember
right.
where I
That
felt completely accepted.
that word alive
Mm-hmm.
is your signal that you found it. Because
Uh-huh.
when we are in our authentic self, that is the quality. It doesn't necessarily mean we feel joy, we feel, because we might be authentic and feeling, firm or boundaried or unhappy about something.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a quality of aliveness
Mm-hmm.
that is our signal of authenticity.
Ah. Oh, I love that. I love that. The story of the Buddha, um, I mean, without getting into the whole story, he lived a great life of luxury, and then he had a great life of deprivation, and he couldn't figure out what worked, and so he decided that he would sit under the Bodhi tree until he figured it out. And then at some point, he figured it out and he started walking into town to give his first teaching. And he had a glow about him, as the legend goes. And somebody
Mhm.
stopped him and said, are you a god? And he goes, no. Are you a man? And he goes, I'm not sure anymore. Well, then what are you? And he said, I am awake.
Yeah. Yep. Synonym in
Alive,
this,
awake,
it's same,
same.
same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, this seems a little bit, spiritual. It seems a little bit uh, outside of the textbook. Am I right?
Yeah. We were not talking about this in grad school.
Okay. So what led you, a clinical psychologist trained classically, to
Mhm.
start to push the boundaries?
Yeah, thank you. So when I trained, and this was, a bit ago now, and I wanna
20
leave
years.
space for the possibility that things have evolved, which I'm sure they have. The emphasis was so much on the mind, on understanding of uncovering the why and the what. So a very kind of rational approach in a way to moving somebody towards balance and health. When I started my practice, I was a quote unquote talk therapist. That's what we did. We sat, chaired a couch, looked each other in the eye, and talked. That was the method. And while people made progress through the method of understanding themselves and how they came to be and what was going on, it was not for everyone unlocking actual change. It was, what I would hear repeatedly is, I understand why I'm doing these things, but I can't stop doing it. They
Yeah.
saw the
Yeah.
pattern, they got the pattern, but their life wasn't really changing. Maybe the manifestation of that pattern was taking different forms,
Yeah,
but it was still
I
the
just,
same pattern.
I just want to stop there a second
Mhm,
and allow me and you and everyone to just reflect on that. What you said, people understand the pattern. They know that what they're doing is not helpful, yet they continue to do it. And somebody once said insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. But
mhm,
they're not insane. They're just really
mhm,
normal. And this is just a pattern that people engage in.
right, and
And
the
you,
words that
yeah.
come with it are stuck and, like, some version of unsatisfied.
Hmm.
Life on paper might look really good. I have a job, I have financial stability, I have a family, whatever it might be, but a sense of something being missing.
Mm.
There's kind of a flatness, or,
Hmm.
one of two things, a flatness or even an anxiety for some people. And so, where it led me to next on my path was digging into the body, somatic practices, because I thought, okay, we have to kind of take the understanding that exists in the mind and spiral or descend it down into the body so people can feel embodied change.
Hmm.
If they can take their understanding and bring it into their bodies, maybe they can start feeling real change. And that actually created progress for even more people that I was working with. So I started to see people being able to feel their intuitive knowing, feel in their body their yeses and their no, be able to make aligned decisions from a deeper knowing that existed beyond their mind. But even still, there
Hmm.
were limitations. And that then, and this, is a series of many, many kind of learnings for me personally. I had been a many years long meditator. And so I started bringing mindfulness based practices into my psychotherapy work. And so I started to see how I was not even intentionally, but beautifully weaving mind, body, and now you could say spirit or soul into the way I was working with people. And that really started to unlock change, growth, transformation. Was not, there's a lot of kind of in our zeitgeist right now, languaging around mind, body, spirit, integrative, holistic. But what does that really mean in practice?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, how can we really bring all three of those together in one place? And so that was my aim
Mm-hmm.
in weaving in all these different modalities. And from there, I started exploring the modality of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, because that method in and of itself tended to bring in mind, body, and spirit all at once.
All at once. Yeah. Well, before we get there, I just want to mention something that I read about a couple of years ago over here at Duke University. I'm in North Carolina, but Duke, they have a baby lab.
Mm.
And they do a lot of research with babies. Again, going back to the idea of who you really are and your authentic self and the child that you were born into. So they took babies, and I may be wrong on the age, but I think it was 3 to 8 months. I'm thinking, but it might have been, I might not be sure about that. But they did this experiment where they had a chest, and they had a yellow rabbit and a black rabbit, or a yellow rabbit and a white rabbit. And the yellow rabbit would come over and try to open the chest. And they had the yellow rabbit. Then they had a black and a white, maybe it wasn't black, red and a blue rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And the red rabbit would prevent the yellow rabbit from opening the chest and push it down. And the yellow rabbit would try to pick it up, and the red rabbit would push it down. Then they would also show the baby the yellow rabbit trying to open the chest and the blue rabbit helping the rabbit open the chest. And then they would present the red and the blue rabbit to the baby, and the baby, at some significant amount, I believe it was in the 80s, would choose the blue rabbit.
The pro-social rabbit.
The pro-social rabbit.
Yeah.
Even at that very young age, kind of really giving us an indication that who we are born at is good.
I know that in my bones.
Mm-hmm.
That's been one of the gifts of being a psychologist, is I know some of the people I've worked with over the years in the world appear as maybe problematic.
Yes. Sweet.
But when I get to be with them long enough that they start to peel back those protectors and get to see who they really are, every single time they're inherently good.
Mm-hmm.
The ways they're showing up in the world that is challenging is really just about their wounding.
Mm-hmm.
And I, one trick I mentor up and coming therapists. If they're having a hard time with one of their clients, I'll say, imagine them sitting across from you as their 3-year-old self, their 4-year-old self. That self wasn't bad. There was no, maybe they were challenging even then, but there's an innocence that we can connect to. This is disregarding the very, very, very small portion of our population that might actually have frontal lobe lesions and be sociopathic. Okay, I'm not talking about those people, but pretty much everyone we come into contact with is inherently good. But then things occur in their life and they grow those layers, those protective layers, and now maybe they look selfish or arrogant or whatever it might be. But underneath is that self that chose the pro-social bunny.
Mm. I'm just thinking, there is the word faith. This, I don't know why this just came to me, but the word faith. We kind of understand it in a religious context. Optimists certainly understand it into how they think things are going to, play out in their lives. But if we were to say to somebody, I know that committee in your head is constantly telling you that you're not this enough or that enough or pretty enough or thin enough or, smart enough or whatever. And But if you have faith that you are so much more than that, if you are this inherently good creature,
Mm-hmm.
um, it doesn't seem like people are willing to have that kind of faith about themselves. I mean, I could
I
believe
know.
in a supernatural being and angels and demons and all that and have faith that they exist, but to have faith that I am one of them
Right.
seems to be, hard for some folks to reach.
There's an idea that we have to see it to know it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this idea of mirroring, of, okay, let's just take it in the context of therapy, because that's the world I live in. I really do, by and large, love all of the people I work with.
Mm.
And I think one of the aspects of healing people encounter in a therapeutic relationship where there truly is care is they have mirrored back to them through the eyes of that caring other their goodness. And now that they can see it, they can believe it. They can feel it, they can believe it. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people unfortunately grow up with parents who are maybe at the very best distracted, and maybe on the more problematic end neglectful, or all the other things that can happen, and they don't really see mirrored back to them enough through their parents' eyes that care, that love, that delight. And they lose contact with their inherent goodness because it's not mirrored back.
Mm-hmm.
So,
There is a meditation that I use sparingly.
mm,
I find that it's powerful, and not being a trained psychologist, sometimes it's hard for me to know when something might be too intense.
mm,
So I use this sparingly when I'm sure. But it's called seeing yourself through the eyes of a loved one.
mm,
And the process is just to sit and imagine somebody who you are absolutely sure loves you unconditionally, or at least has your best interest in mind.
right.
And then to move over into their seat and look back at yourself and see yourself through their eyes.
Mm.
And I mean, people break into sobbing at how beautiful they are.
I teach meditation a couple times a week here. Can I steal that?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, sure.
And what I want to say is I hope you feel emboldened to use that less sparingly. The
Okay.
world really needs people seeing themselves through the eyes of love.
Mm-hmm.
And so much becomes possible when people glimpse it.
Yeah, I mean, just that question, did who do you know loves? Oh, my grandma loved me. She
Mm,
always loved me. She always had cookies for me. My grandma loved me. I said, can you see yourself through her eyes? But just to ask the question doesn't have the somatic, doesn't have
right,
that experiential
right,
thing,
right.
where you actually feel it. Um,
I feel it just even imagining the practice right now. Yeah, it changes my nervous system
mhm.
just imagining it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll write it up in a script and record it and send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite powerful. The other thing that I just recorded was a Tonglen
Mm,
meditation, breathing in the pain of another and breathing out
right,
healing.
right.
Um, that's a powerful one too.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So psychedelics.
From the love bubble to psychedelics. I like
Yeah.
that transition.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I did my fair share of mushrooms in the 70s,
Mhm.
and I did some acid. And my what I come away from with that experience is that it gives you, of course, in an illegal, unproctored, un un unmonitored way.
Mm,
We just it gives you a glimpse of the divine without any preparation for being
right.
able to accept it. and and then it goes away, and you're left like, huh? uh,
Gobsmacked. Yeah.
Gobsmacked, right, and unprepared, and
Right.
unable to um, create it without
Mm,
the drugs. So then,
right.
and so not particularly a good idea in retrospect. But
Mm,
I'm not regretful. I mean, I'm thankful for for what I experienced through that. And so when you use it in a proctored way like that, tell us about how that works and what it does for folks and the kind of progress they can make.
yeah. Yeah. I think what you're describing is having these big experiences that then you cannot integrate. You cannot take what
Correct.
you
That's the way to say it.
experienced
Yep.
and bring it into your life in a way that in your day to day you're feeling changed by that big experience. And
Correct.
that can definitely be the case with recreational use. And then sometimes people can, and it changes their lives, and but it definitely is a bit more of a game of Russian roulette when it's you're out in
Hmm.
the world and you don't know your dose, and you don't can't anticipate the environment you're going to be in.
Right. Right.
So the final chapter of this winding and exciting journey I've taken as a psychotherapist in all these different modalities I've learned and integrated over the years. The final frontier has been psychedelics, and the I'm in California. The only legal psychedelic in California as of this conversation is ketamine, which isn't actually considered a classical psychedelic, but for the case of this conversation, we'll just use that terminology. Um, the other main psychedelics being kind of uncovered in the research are psilocybin mushrooms, like you had experience with, and also MDMA, which has a lot of cultural misunderstanding, but it's really a beautiful medicine, especially working with people who have had a lot of trauma. So, what I discovered with training in psychedelics is it's a big tool. In my toolbox that I open, it's my biggest tool, and it's an exciting one to use, but it's not necessarily a tool that's going to resonate or be appropriate for everyone. And there's kind of a whole other conversation there about um, the rule outs for this work with people.
Hmm.
But it's a beautiful method because it quiets the thinking mind. And when we can soften and bypass the thinking mind, what comes to the surface is I'll put it in a big category of kind of truth, even though the truth can come out as very symbolic and we don't take everything that happens in psychedelic experiences as literal. It's our unconscious, our soul selves, all these aspects of ourselves that in ordinary consciousness we don't necessarily have access to. With intentional psychedelic use, we can now have access to a much, much, much larger spectrum of self. So I mean both the human self, the parts of us that we've repressed, the experiences that have gone unprocessed, as well as what you might want to call the soul self, the part of us that is kind of the self that we cultivate in a lot of meditation practices, the eternal self that is unchanging, infinite, um, and our divine self, if that languaging resonates with people. So when I discovered the way I found psychedelics was just through the research. I kept, through what I think is a series of synchronicities. It was like every journal that got delivered to my office, every book that somebody was recommending to me, every podcast, right? It was just like everything was research, research, research. And the numbers were staggering. There's kind of a unspoken thing in psychotherapy that and I say this with like, I still am a clinical psychologist. I still have a private practice. Our success rates are not as high as we would like them to be. And that's okay. It's still better than nothing by far, but they are nowhere near the rates of success that were being shown in the research with psychedelics. And numbers like 80% remission of symptoms 6 months past the medicine
Wow.
session, right? So these are numbers that in pure talk therapy or psychotropic medications, we're not getting
This
these
is
kind
off
of
the
numbers.
charts.
It is, and
Well,
that's
it's
what
not
pulled
off the
me in.
charts now because it literally is the chart.
It is, yeah. And it was a big leap for me. I'm a very kind of like I was a talk therapist, and yeah, I had somatic and mindfulness practices but this felt very edgy in a way, but I could not escape the research, and the research was astounding, the progress they were seeing. So I did a couple years of training. Like I said, the medicine I work with right now is ketamine because that is legal in California. If you go to Colorado or Oregon, you can sit with medicinal mushrooms. But yeah, it's amazing the change that I see with people over time. Even people who I had been working with in my private practice for years, when we started incorporating psychedelic assisted therapy, it catalyzed a rate of growth that was beyond anything I had seen before. And
Mhm.
and I want to say with, there's a lot of I think the quote unquote psychedelic renaissance is starting to get tempered a little. There's some, quieting of like this is going to change the world. But it really does create amazing change for many people. That being said, like anything, there's a spectrum of change that's possible. So
Mhm.
there can be kind of a hope that like, oh, I'll do this and then everything will be okay. The dosing session, the medicine session, what is also known as the journey work, is just one phase. Actually, what I believe is the most important phase in psychedelic assisted therapy is what happens after you've taken the psychedelic medicine.
And on that note, let me just say that our time is running out, but we are not done with Kelly Waggoner because we're going to talk about some amazing stuff that she's been able to experience through the integration of body, mind, and spirit, sometimes assisted by the psychedelics, but sometimes just in allowing ourselves to engage in beauty and awe and create new narratives. So, this is the end of part one. We're not done with Kelly. Tune in to part two, and we're going to find some amazing things. We might even begin to explore our connection to spirit, to the divine. So, thanks, everybody. Thank you, Kelly, for
Thank
your
you.
time, and we'll see you guys on the other side.